This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome in. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We are Baltimore positive, positively getting you through April and Easter and Good Friday, and hopefully a good weekend of baseball here as the Orioles go out on the road for the first time. Probably going to see some cold weather in Chicago next week as well. It's been a little while since I've had this guy on, and on Sunday when the Twins manager came out to argue with the machine, I enjoyed the ABS so much the first weekend that I went through my phone and I'm like, who do I want to talk to about this? And I thought, well, I want to have some of my buddies and some of my sports writer buddies, and I wanted to find some ball players and whatnot. And I thought, I haven't had Ken Singleton on in a little while, and Ken came to me about 4 months ago. And Kenny, how are you? I just want to give you some love. How are things at Sparks? You're still local. If somebody bumps into you in the mall or sees you around
Yeah.
Hunt Valley, they know it's you. But I sent you a picture of this because I collect Louis Aparicio esoteric weird stuff. I have all the cards and the autograph, like all of that, because of my cousin, right? And when this thing became available on the internet, this is in 1973. They call them
Wow.
cello packs. This was a Christmas cello pack. And when it had Aparicio on it, and listen, it has Rod Carew on it too. So I have
Yeah.
Rod Carew and that's Billy Williams as well, another Hall of Famer. That
Yeah.
I saw Ken Singleton in that Montreal Expos gear there in '73 before you got here, and I said I need to buy this one. So I sent you a picture of this, and I said, man, there's you. There's an Aparicio and a Singleton right in the same place there, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. You know, Rodney Carew and I have some history. We played against each other in the Bronx League when we were teenagers. And
Really?
yeah, Rodney was a couple of years older than me. And I remember playing against him. I was about 15, maybe 16. And this guy kept hitting and hitting and hitting. We couldn't get him out. And the next thing I knew, he was playing second base for the Minnesota Twins. So, he preceded me to the major leagues.
And he never stopped hitting all the way to Cooperstown, right?
Oh, my goodness. 3,000 something hits.
You know, I had him on. I was in Minnesota the other day seeing Springsteen. I had him on at the Mall of America after he
Wow.
had his transplant. And I had him, one of the greatest segments I've ever done, 35 years of doing this. I played it last week, and I play it all the time because it's an eternal piece. You know, the Ravens' former tight end, Conrad Ruland, who I knew and covered, died. And instantly his heart was donated to save Rod's life. And
Wow.
Rod sat with me inside the Mall of America, right by the Harmon Killebrew home run and all that stuff, and told the story with Conrad Ruland's mother on the air with me.
Wow.
I mean, of all the things I've done on this radio station, I'll get messy talking about it. But Rod Carew, I did not know that you were. I knew you were contemporaries, but I didn't know you grew
Yeah.
up together.
Yeah, well, not really. He was from the Bronx. I grew up the next town up, Mount Vernon, but we played against each other in the Bronx League in the summer, just outside of Yankee Stadium and other places up in New York, too. From what I heard about Rod's heart attack, he had it on the golf course, if I'm not mistaken. And from what I understand, he had it on the first hole when he was out in the fairway, and they saw him from the clubhouse and were able to call 911. Now, he feels if he had been on the seventh or eighth hole, he was playing by himself. Nobody would have seen him, and that probably would have been it. So,
Wow. Well, I hope
yeah, he was very lucky.
I love to visit with him again and catch back up. And he was one of my favorite. Hey, listen, when I played wiffle ball, look, I did the Singleton. I moved the rocks. I got rid of that back line, right? I knew your left stance. I knew your right stance and that downstroke that you had. But Carew had a whole like thing going on that.
Yeah.
I hit like Rod Carew when I was a little leaguer, so I loved Rod Carew. I loved anybody that got on base. My dad was always a Ted Williams guy and the
Yeah.
boxes and the science of hitting, that making contact and getting on. But you were the original walk taker. You were like Earl Weaver. On base percentage was a thing for you before Stratomatic or before analytics, right?
That's true because when I first got to the Orioles, when I got traded to Baltimore, I come to spring training, and Earl says to me, "You're going to lead off this year." And I said, "What? I already had a 100 RBI season in Montreal." And I said, "Earl, I don't steal bases. That's not what I do." He says, "That's not the point." He says, "You get on base. You walk a lot, Bobby Grich walks a lot. He'll bat second, you bat first. My first time up in Detroit opening day, I walk on 4 pitches, go to third on a base hit by Tommy Davis. Lee May hits a 3-run homer. We're up 3-0, just like that in the first inning. I'm the first one. I scored the first run of the season. I come back to the dugout. Earl points his finger in my chest, and he says, "That's what the hell I'm talking about. Just get on base."
And that was that. I mean, Earl, what did you learn from Earl? The book just came out 2 years ago. John Miller wrote that great book. I've had him on a bunch of times. I mean, what wisdom do you extol even now with the ABS thing? And we're going to get into that in a minute, because you were a guy that had great command of the strike zone, that when you looked at the umpire, you're like, you weren't Tony Gwynn, but you were, you knew a ball from a strike, and like side-eyeing umpires, all of these things that you lived your whole life as a minor leaguer, as a 20-year major league player, and then as a broadcaster for 3-4 decades, that everything about the game changed last week. And that's why I was so excited to text you over the weekend and all my baseball nerds and saying, oh my God, they made baseball better. I can't believe that they did. This is the first thing I'm looking at and saying, this is eternal. This isn't going anywhere. And they're not getting rid of the umpires because there's too much conflict involved in this to make it more like American Idol. It's great theater to sit here at home and guess along and then wonder whether the pitcher, the catcher, or the batter are going to guess along.
Not only that, you see the reaction of the crowd at the ballpark, when they see because this is kind of instantaneous. I was kind of worried it was going to take too long. You know what I mean? But it takes less than 10 seconds for you to get the right results. And that's the whole thing to me, is getting these calls right. It started with the reviews on the bases, and now it's balls and strikes. And, the game is still moving along at a pretty good pace. I mean, they sped up the pitchers. So, you have to and the batters can't step out of the box forever. So this is like a natural progression. Now, I don't want to see them do much more, because I think we're about as far as we can go. But this is a good thing. At first, I wasn't sure about it, but now I kind of like it. And Nestor, I also think we're finding out who the best umpires are and who the ones who aren't so good. And maybe they'll make changes down the road as to who the better umpires are and who the worst ones are. Maybe they'll start bringing up guys from the minor leagues to take the place of some of these veterans.
Well, we've watched Jim Palmer call games here forever and have his wisdom. You call games for a generation or two in New York, and your wisdom was extolled with what the strike zone is. But as a player, you knew every umpire. You had your own scouting report that he's going to give me the high strike. He's going to call that outside pitch inside, and I got to swing at that because he's going to call that a strike, even though I think it's a ball, right?
That's true, I think. But over the years, you mentioned my strike zone ability to recognize balls and strikes. I think you get a reputation with the umpires too. I think that I could take the close ones and get away with it more so than some of the other guys. Rick Dempsey used to say to me, "You take that pitch and they don't call it a strike." I said, "Rick, the reason is because I'm not up here swinging at everything like you are." I just said, you got to trust the guy behind the plate to a certain extent. When it got a close pitch, I always felt, Nestor, if the ball was too hard for me to reach and hit, it was probably going to be a ball. So I just sometimes the pitchers make great pitches in their strikes. You take it with a grain of salt and you walk back to the dugout. I mean, I did walk more than I struck out, but I struck out 1,200 times. But I walked more than that. So the fact is that the guy behind the plate, I just want him really to be on his P's and Q's when there are men on base, because that's how I make a living, driving in runs. You get a bad call with nobody on, okay, I can get around this. But when I got a guy on third base with less than 2 outs, it's my job to get him home. I want that umpire to zero in on the strike zone and know where a ball and a strike is in that particular at-bat.
Ken Singleton is our guest, longtime Yes Network. And listen, I piled on Angelos for all 30, however many years there were, but I always thought like one of the real shames was after you got your internship at Channel 13 back in the day, that you went off and called Yankees baseball and not Orioles baseball for all of those years. You could have been here. All the things that went wrong, all the losing, all the awful Aprils and awful seasons and all of that's gone. 2 years now into new ownership. Rubenstein says they're open for business. They bought an $18.5 million rental for 1 year in Chris Bassett. They spent money on Shane Baz. They imported Pete Alonso from New York. They've given Sam Basayo the money. I don't know where they're going to be with the Boris clients and all of that, but I think we've got some level here. I don't know if they're competent. I don't know where that's all going to be, but I feel like they're going to try at a different level, and they are, than anything we've seen here in a while. So I want to go fresh slate, open canvas on where you are with the Orioles in the entire operation. You're back here. You're not calling Yankee games. I think they're going to pull you back in one more time because they call you. But
no, I've done enough.
You've done enough. But
Yeah.
maybe celebrity Oriole game one night or something like that and call an Oriole game here. But for the Orioles, you would have a different version of the Orioles now than we've had before. And for that, I'm heartened, Kenny. I'm heartened that the next 10 or 15 years for baseball in our city, if they can figure out labor at the end of the year, will at least give more people more reasons to want to support the Orioles, support baseball, and go down to the ballpark. I think that they're on to something better than it used to be here. And for that, I'm very grateful.
Yeah, well, I am too, because I still have a lot of orange and black running through my veins. That's true. But you have to remember, before I got to the Yankees, I was doing Montreal games for 12 years. So by the time I got to New York, I already had 12 years of broadcasting experience, and then 25 years in New York. That adds up to 37 years of broadcasting. The fact is that with the Orioles, in a way, while I was in New York, the Yankees were having great success. I mean, it was the Jeter years, Mariano Rivera, O'Neill, David Kahn. I can name a lot of great players that they had, Bernie Williams. And they were fun to cover, I got to admit. I was kind of going back to my roots because I grew up in the New York area. And I saw a lot of Yankee baseball growing up. I saw Mickey Mantle and Yogi and all those guys on TV. So it wasn't strange for me to be in New York, so to speak. Maybe it would have been better. It would have been easier if I was doing Oriole games. I wouldn't have to get, be on Amtrak once or twice a week, going up to New York and back. But during those years, the Yankees were having great success. They were a great team to cover. And 4 or 5 World Series. I got a bunch of rings from them. So, but my favorite ring, of course, is my Oriole ring that we won in '83. I have 4 kids. I have 4 rings. So they each get one. I can't designate who gets the Oriole ring, but they do know, my kids know the Oriole ring is the favorite. So what I do, it's already in the will. They have to pick the names out of a hat and see who gets the Oriole ring. I can't designate one child over the other. So,
well, I hope we get another one, right? I mean, I was there. I was with you at the vet that night. My dad almost got us killed in Philly that night in '83, yelling at Phillies fans and wagging fingers. But I wouldn't have known, and I'm sure on that night, all of you wouldn't have known that it would be 43 years later, and we still haven't played a game in the World Series here. I hope that we can change. I'm 57 now. I hope we can change that at some point. And I feel like, maybe they're on to something here. Maybe they're better. I'm worried about the defense, worried about the bullpen, all of that. But I think that on a night-by-night basis, they have pitchers that can go out and at least give them a chance to compete. And they have the kind of lineup that can score 6 or 8 runs on any given night.
Yeah, that's true. I think, especially with Alonso on the team, one thing I really like about him, he plays all the time. He's I think in the last 4 years, he's missed like 10 games or less. So you need a guy like that. That's Eddie Murray stuff. You play all the time. That's Singy stuff. You play all the time. One thing about the '83, we had our reunion a couple of years ago. I don't know if you remember. It was the 40th year of or 50th, whatever, of winning the World Series in Philadelphia. So. I was driving home with my wife after the game, and I said to her, probably 3/4 of the people in the ballpark tonight weren't around.
Weren't born.
Yeah, they weren't born yet when we won the World Series. And I hope the grandpas and the older parents were there to explain to them how good these guys really were. Everybody knows Cal Ripken and everybody knows Eddie Murray, but maybe they don't know Al Bunbury or Singy or Mike Boddicker or Tippy that as much as the Hall of Fame guys. So I just I was thinking about that on the way home, and I said, well, hopefully they can get one soon. Hopefully they can get another one for
Well,
this generation.
I think everybody's worried about the state of the game, and you were one of the original battlers in the Messersmith era. 73. Yeah. I got your 70. This is 1973. This is when all hell broke loose with free agency and Reggie and, just all of that, teammates, the whole deal in that era of big versus small. And now we have the Dodgers being funded to the level, and the Orioles are playing the Pirates this weekend, right? So I would think at the end of this year there's going to be a war. And the fans always wind up being the last ones to find out. But are you of any mindset about the salary cap ceiling and floor as you get older, or are you still hardline, from that school of thought? And, I know Flanagan got swept up in the collusion part of this and got screwed. I remember talking to him about all of that. There's just such a long, lurid, ugly history of labor in the sport of baseball. And I think the young people are going to come to a head to that in 8 or 9 months when it gets ugly all over again for the first time in a long time to understand the history. And I said when Arrighetti and Rubenstein bought the team, I'm like, they got $1.8 billion. I hope they can afford $28.99 and get a copy of John Hellier's Lords of the Realm,
Yeah. Nestor, you're right about the fact that, back in the day, there was a lot of contention between the owners and the players. It was like every other year there was either a strike or a lockout. And it was more or less things like free agency and arbitration and pension benefits and all that. Well, all that's settled now. All those things are settled. Now, basically, to me, it's about the big pie. I mean, there's so much more money in the game because of television, internet sales, all those sort of things. I just think it's more about the dollars and cents, bottom line. I do think, when you talk about what the players are getting now in the salaries, I don't think they're going to accept the salary cap. I don't want them to. There is sort of a soft salary cap right now with the luxury tax, but teams like the Dodgers, they don't care. They don't care. Teams like the Yankees, they kind of care. But the Dodgers, to me, they're almost in a perfect situation. They got all these superstars on their team. They got great weather all year long, so they don't have to worry about rainouts or people not showing up. People get tickets. They get 40,000, 50,000 a night. They got a great team. They got a great local TV contract. All the owners share in the national money with TV. But it's just so much more money pouring into the game. And some of the owners, I think what you need is a salary floor, if you ask me. You got to get some of these bottom teams like Pittsburgh and some of these to spend the money. Don't just put it in your pocket. They seem to be doing so a little bit better this year. But I'm with you. I do feel there's storm clouds on the horizon. And they're already talking about, possible lockout next spring training. Hopefully it doesn't happen. The game is great. I mean, you've got so many stars all throughout baseball. And baseball, to me, it's springtime now. This is what we should be doing. We shouldn't be sitting at home, twiddling our thumbs while they're trying to figure out how they're going to split up billions of dollars. That doesn't make sense to me.
Ken Singleton is my guest, played the game at a high level, reported on the game, and is now the only game. It's you and Tippy out playing golf, right? That's what you're doing. How much ball are you watching? And I know sometimes, I haven't watched the dribble in the NCAA tournament because it's just kind of moved past me. But I'm thinking when it's been your life and you're here in Baltimore, the team has a chance. You get an eye on the games, right?
Yeah, I do. I watch them. I will admit I don't watch as many as I used to because I don't have to anymore. I watch basically the Orioles and I watch the Yankees too. I mean, the Yankees are on the West Coast and they were until yesterday, and I watched them and they performed well. They won 5 out of the first 6. The Orioles at 3-3. But I think, Nestor, I don't know if you'll agree with me on this. Now, the Orioles opened up at home. I think teams really mesh together when they go on the road. And I think it's because when you're at home, after the game's over, you go home to your family, your kids and your wife, and you're doing things. You're going out to the Giant. You're doing things in the neighborhood. But when you're on the road, you're on buses. You're on planes. You're in hotels. You eat together. You travel together. And that's where teams really mesh. So the Orioles are going out on the road. This is where I think this team, because they got a lot of new players, this is where you find out what your teammates are really like when you're with them every day. on the road. Hopefully they do well on this road trip coming up. And I think it starts out in Pittsburgh, and get over 500. I read something the other day that the procrastinators said that they think that the projections in the American League East where every team's going to finish over 500. So that that means they're all going to be fighting for it at the end.
Well, I think they have a chance. And, from a rotation standpoint, the Eflin injury, not good. Obviously, need to get Holiday back, Westberg, they're better players. Defensively, a little more challenged. But the game's changed so much that, like you mentioned, not striking out. It's a badge of honor for you to say, I walked more than I struck out. There aren't a whole lot of guys in baseball, and it's acceptable now. The game has changed in that way.
Yeah, you're right, Nestor. I used to hate to strike out. I felt it was a non-productive at bat. And it seems as though that it might be changing a little bit because the team, a couple of things. The Orioles, I think, are in a position that Toronto was in 2 years ago. Toronto finished in last place 2 years ago, and they came within inches of winning the World Series last year against the vaunted Dodgers. I do think one reason why the Toronto Blue Jays had such success last year, their guys put the ball in play. Their team did not strike out much. I think they had the fewest strikeouts in the major leagues. So when you put the ball in play, you put pressure on the defense. Defenses make errors. They make mistakes. You put the ball in play, something falls in. You get a broken bat single or a little bloop that can drive in a run with the bases loaded instead of striking out, which nothing happens. I think if the Orioles had one game where they struck out 16 times against Minnesota.
That's correct. In the shadows, yep.
I think they won that game, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. You got to cut down on strikeouts and hit the ball. And to me, if they do that and they play decent defense, you mentioned Eflin's injury, but they got Kramer. He's going to be up pretty soon. He'll be back. And he's a pretty good pitcher. I liked him. I thought he did well last year. So at least they got a replacement there.
Ken Singleton is our guest. He still lives here in Maryland, right outside the Beltway. If you see Singy around, it's him. I had occasion to do a cup of Super Bowl about 2 months ago, and I had a young lady, Alyssa Vagnoni, who stopped by, and we did about 20 minutes, and we talked a lot about you and a lot about cool kids, and I want to talk to you about it a little bit because I said, I got to get Singy on here, but it's February. I'll wait till baseball season, and here we are. It's baseball season, so here we are. The charity part of this and your community experience probably working for an organization like the Hofberger Orioles and EBW in the 70s and 80s, that it was always a big part of this. And, I'll get Bob Brown and even Helen Conklin and all of my Rick Vaughn, Charles Steinberg, all of them, that they're the connection. And listen, I'll beat up on Katie Griggs and all of these new people running the Orioles. The Orioles were a community organization. They're not anymore, and they haven't been, and Angelo's kind of destroyed that part of it in regard to having you and Rich Dower and Tippy Martinez and Rick Dempsey feel like family here. Palmer still, eats and breathes and lives off of that in that period of time. And then the Bordicks and the different people that have, BJ Suroff, who came here later and emulated that and still do. And you'll still hit a golf ball with all of those guys because they live here. They wanted to be here. Boog, all of these people that made their lives here. It was it not just optional. It made you feel like you were a citizen involved in this, not like you were just taking a check and you were a celebrity who played ball. The cool kids thing has been something that's defined you. And when I think Ken Singleton, I think cool kids. And I think you've been at this for most of your lifetime here, right?
Well, thank you very much, Nestor. Yeah, I've been involved with cool kids. It's going on almost 20 years now. The fact is that I feel that, I was taught this by Ron Shapiro, who was our agent for many of the teams, guys on the team. And the fact is that when these people come to the ballpark or watch you on TV, or when you go to gas station, you're getting gas and they all said, good luck. And, good luck tonight. I'm going to the game. Well, you don't want to disappoint these people. And they supported me all those years. I was with Baltimore for 10 years and we had a winning record every year. So it was a lot of happiness around here in those days. I wish they had the wild card back then. We would have made more playoffs. We got the 2 World Series, but we finished second 6 times. So
it won 100 games, didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah, you're right. 100 wins in 1980 didn't make the playoffs. So those are the things that I remember. My parents, who are not around anymore, unfortunately, because they were great influence on my kids. But when they moved down here from New York, after they retired, they got to see, I think about the last 2 or 3 years of my career. And, my parents had supported me my whole life. And the payoff for them, they worked hard. They didn't get to see me play much baseball growing up, but the payoff came later on. When they were retired, they got to come to every game at Memorial Stadium. The ushers treated them well. They moved them down. They were. So that's the sort of thing I remember about playing for the Baltimore Orioles. So it's my turn to give back to the community, and with cool kids, and you got kids who are suffering from cancer. That tugs at your heart, Nestor. It does. Some of these kids don't make it, and that makes it even worse. But I know that the survival rates are getting better. I mean, the treatments for cancer are getting better over the years. Research has proven that. And it's just that, I have my golf tournament. It's June 13th through the 15th here at Hunt Valley Country Club. And a lot of my former teammates turn out. We have people come from all over the country, and they support us. And, a lot of people in the community support cool kids too. You mentioned Alyssa. She told me about that you had her on, and she says that guy's something else. So yeah, I've known that for a long time.
Well, listen, Kenny, I don't golf, but I serve a cold beer on a golf course. So if you need somebody to drive the beer truck around or whatever, and wet down the troops a little bit that weekend of June, I will volunteer to volunteer. But I'll hit a tee shot, but you don't want to see me play golf. We'll be chasing the balls into the woods.
When I go into the office, when I go into the cool kids office, I will mention the office is in Towson. Anybody out there who wants some information about cool kids, you go to coolkidscampaign.org, and you'll see what we're all about, and able to help people who, kids and their families who aren't doing quite as well as you are right now.
Well, Singy, I'll tell you, when my wife had cancer for those 2.5 years, she battled down at Hopkins. She spent 155 nights in the hospital,
wow.
An overnight. And my wife was bald, 80 pounds with a tree, thing stuck in her chest, fighting for her life. And we would go down on a day when she could take the elevator down from the 5th floor to the 2nd floor to the commissary at Hopkins there at the Zayad Center with the colored the glass that you see over in East Baltimore. It's right there. I could see her. Literally, that's it right there. And down below there was an area. And when we would go there, she would see the kids come from the other side. Wrecked me. It's going to wreck me right now talking about it. But seeing kids that are sick, oh my God, it's right here,
Yeah, we have Christmas parties, Halloween parties for the kids. All kinds of activities at the clubhouse in Towson. We have nights where the parents can drop the kids off, and the parents can go out and have a date night. We have vacation homes. All these services are free that we give to these kids and their families. So hopefully we can keep doing it for many, many more years. We got a lot of support here, and we got a great board. And a lot of support here in the Baltimore area.
Well, I don't know the next time I'm going to have you on, but I'm going to make a threat right now that when I'm see the last day of the season here for the Baltimore Orioles, I want to get the dates right here. They play your New York Yankees in the Bronx on Sunday, September 27th. So on Monday, September 28th, are the Orioles a playoff team, Singy?
It depends on the pitchers. That's the way I look at it. I think they will be better and playing for a playoff spot. I do think the Yankees are going to win the division, but I do think they're playoff contenders for sure. And it's going to be a fun summer, one way or the other, whether you make it or not. And I think if they don't make it, they'll be closer to making it the next year. You know what I'm saying? It's like a progression, but I do think they got a good shot at it this year.
Well, I don't have to ask you if the Yankees are going to make the playoffs because they always do, right? I mean, that's sort of the conundrum of the sport, I think, to some degree. We don't think the Dodgers are going to make the playoffs. We just know they are, right? Like around here, we get to have a debate about it.
Yeah, I just want somebody to knock them off this year. The last team to win 3 World Series in a row were the Yankees back in the day. So I don't want the Dodgers to do that.
Are you still the best golfer from the '83 World Series team, or is Tippy beat you sometimes?
No. The best golfer is Rick Dempsey.
Really?
And I mean, easily he's the best. His group won our tournament. Was it 2 years ago? Rick also, remember, there's a lot of young guys in this tournament. And these guys 25, 26, 30 years old. And we're, in our 70s now. Rick won the long drive contest. And so that tells you what kind of golfer he is. He's really good. Tippy's good. Bumper's pretty good too. So I'm not, I'm up there, but nobody can touch Rick. He's that good.
See, I did not know that. When I get Dipper on, I'll talk to him about that, him and his baseball warehouse and all that good stuff as well. Ken Singleton is our guest, always number 21 in the program, number 1 in your hearts. And for me, when this thing wound up on eBay, when I saw this thing, I'm like, I'm going to win that bid. So,
Nestor, I look like I'm 21 or 18 years old in that picture.
Well, it said 29 in your jersey. You were not 29 just quite yet. Yeah, I don't think there. But do you still have all your old Expo stuff, man? Less Expos.
No, not really. I've given a lot of stuff away over the years, that used it for to sell it for charity situations.
Look at how good that hat looks, man. There's nothing better than it. And I know they're talking to maybe putting a team back up there or whatnot, but
I don't think so.
I love Montreal, and I know you love your memories too.
Great city, but only in the summer. It's cold in the winter, man. It's cold up there.
Grand Orange. He is Ken Singleton. My thanks to you for coming on. My thanks to Farnan and Dermer. They're the comfort guys, and I got to give a shout out to them because on Wednesday morning, I awakened at 6 a.m. in Minnesota, and my wife called me, and I'm like, oh, that's not good. Answer the phone. We had a pipe burst in my place. Called Zach Dermer over at Farnan and Dermer, the comfort guys. They got out within an hour. We got it put away. I checked it out this morning. No damage because we knew someone. So you know someone too, Farnan and Dermer. They sponsor our Maryland Crab Cake Tour along with GBMC, where I have a doctor's appointment this month coming up, and our friends at the Maryland Lottery. We're going to get those Maryland Treasures tickets out. Next Friday, we were at Fadley's having crab cakes, and my old friend Stephen L. Miles is stopping by. We're going to talk about it. John Miller's in town next Wednesday with the Gigantes. Gave me a chance to go back and forth with John. John can't join us at Fadley's next week, but I'm going to try to track him down and get a few minutes with him as well because he knows a thing or two about the '83 Orioles too. I am Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. It's baseball season, and we have a strike zone that we've automated. It's fun. We're Baltimore positive. Stay with us.